What does it take to create a vibrant, thriving life? First, the sad news is that Thoreau was right. Most people are leading quiet lives of desperation, lacking in meaning, fulfillment, and vitality. But we choose more. We choose to create extraordinary lives. And the Art of Vibrant Living show entertains you with inspiration, empowerment, and education to create your life into a masterpiece. It's time. Let's vibe up. Hey, aloha, y'all. Welcome to the show. I am Daniel Aaron, your host. This is the Art of Vibrant Living show. We got a juicy, cool show today. Maybe we'll spark a little controversy. I got an amazing guest. I'll tell you about him in a moment. First, though, the Art of Vibrant Living. What on earth does that mean? It means you living your best, awesome, a thriving life filled with passion, purpose, and prosperity, like as your standard. And here's what I know. It doesn't tend to happen accidentally. It takes intention. It takes education. It takes some action. So my invitation, I implore you, please, yes, be entertained by the show today. And more importantly, take at least one thing where you go, yeah, that makes sense to me. I'm going to try that out in my life. In other words, implement, take action on what you learned today, put it in practice in your life, try it out, because you deserve to have a vibrant, thriving, amazing life. Not only does it make your life better, it makes the world better. And if you don't feel like you are living up to your potential right now and you'd like some help, please send me an email, daniel@danielaaron.com. I'd love to connect with you. And whether I can support you directly or not, I'm sure I got something helpful for you. So, Jason Donaldson, amazing, amazing man. He's a Galactic Shaman and Psychotherapist. He's got a bachelor's degree in psychology from the University of Hawai'i in Hilo, a master's in marriage and family therapy from NCU. He's a certified master Sekhem Energy Practitioner, the innovative mind behind the Galactic Breathing Technique. His diverse background encompasses an array of healing modalities, including ascension mechanics, galactic shamanism, nutrition, tai chi, and tarot. Over more than a decade on Hawaii's Big Island, he's facilitated therapeutic and support groups, workshops, and rite of passage ceremonies, reflecting his dedication to collective healing. And I hope you heard in that introduction, as I do, a man of diversity, a man who can go out into the woo, yet who has his feet on the ground. It's all about the practicalities. Jason, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me to be here. This is great.
Oh, it's awesome. It's a pleasure. So you've got, such a diverse background, and you are up to some stuff that I read in your bio that some people might be like, huh, what is that? And that's the people that are open-minded probably. And then some others might be like, what's that? Right. We were talking about those 3 stages of truth beforehand. So my first question to you, though, is how'd you get into this stuff? Like, what got you here?
A lot of it is, trying to be normal and trying to do what I was told to do and live the way I thought I was supposed to, and having weird experiences and a really powerful mind and thoughts that would just race and run and would really torment me when I was younger. And I didn't really understand until I got older that those are just thoughts. They don't really mean anything. I give them power when I start to dance and embrace them and go on tangents with it and create a whole different reality as a result. And also like a sensitivity to energy. And this comes often from trauma and other experiences where there's a hypervigilance, from the trauma. We're always looking out, noticing, we want to be more aware. We don't want it to happen again. And so that creates some of the anxiety, but there's also like this general, like a highly sensitive person that's been categorized as basically someone that is feeling and noticing more. And there's a certain percentage of the population that has this, and it perpetuates the human species, where there's going to be kind of like the canary in the coal mine. That's like, yeah, I got sick when I ate that, or, something smells kind of weird, or something doesn't feel right. Let's check in with what's going on. And some people are like, oh, you're a lunatic. What are you talking about? But the wise would be like, all right, well, let's see what's going on, because a couple other people said the same thing, and it would be investigated. And so that's what I did with my life, especially with the weird woo-woo stuff, is like, I dismissed it, but then I keep showing up, and then I got curious and I couldn't find answers. Everyone told me it was just make believe. It wasn't real. It's not scientific. But the more I sat and started meditating and coming into presence with what was, the more I started to get answers, and they came from deep within. And then very often it was reflected externally with books and teachers and things like would cross my path, things that I saw in the meditation, like, oh my God, that's the thing I experienced. And so it was like observational a scientific approach, like, just being like, okay, this is what I've experienced. Now I'm going to let that go and just go about my life. And this keeps showing up. So there's a pattern, and just following the pattern, see where it goes.
Makes complete sense to me. And I love that we are in an era when this HSP, highly sensitive person thing, is actually getting known, right? And I relate to it a lot. I remember as a little boy, my mother saying to me, why can't you be more like your brother? Why does everything have to affect you so much? Why can't you just let it roll off your back? And I didn't have any answer for that. I was like, I don't know, man. It's just like, I really feel that stuff. I didn't even have that clarity. I just, of course, internalized it as, I don't know, I'm bad, I'm wrong. But so I'm thrilled that we're getting more awareness around this these days. And I love that you use the word weird. One of the great dictionary definitions for that is supernatural, right? And there's so much pressure to conform to the mainstream, to the normal, and nothing different than that, especially when we're kids, right? Is like, oh, I just want to fit in. There's just this desire and need to be accepted. So you described this kind of progression of noticing that you weren't, like everybody else in different ways. And then you started to investigate, and you started to have experiences yourself, and then get some confirmation from the outside about some of those things. Was there like a point for you where you, I don't know what the right language would be, like came out of the closet, where you're like, I'm going to own this. I'm going to, like be upfront about it?
Not till more recently. Like, I didn't feel safe doing it. Like, a lot of the work I do helps people in a way to become liberated from control mechanisms and things that would feed off of us. And not to like scare anybody, but like, if we're not in our house, like taking ownership of it, if we're leaving the windows and doors open, things get in. But when we come home and we really get present with and look around, like, oh, what's this doing in here? That doesn't need to be here. And a lot of it's grateful to go. It's like, oh, okay, you caught me, I'm out of here. And yeah, it's a lot to explain. And I've kind of already got off on a tangent with it, trying to just explain that component of it. Is it really comes down to the presence. Like, can we be present with what's happening in the moment? And like what you shared about with the emotion and the sensitivity, like very often if we start feeling something, it upsets others because they start to feel what they don't want to feel, and they've been effectively pushing away. And so that's why I think a lot of the power is in the emotions, and letting ourselves feel it and allow it to flow through, versus thinking about it and getting into the story about it. And why is it happening again? Oh my God. And when we let go of all that and we just allow the experience of life to flow through us, there's a wisdom and a knowledge that comes forth, and it comes more from the divine. And that's basically the easiest way I could answer what you said without getting too elaborate.
Yeah, well, that's cool. And I'm also fine with getting more elaborate. We can go anywhere here, no rules. Something you said, though, I want to highlight is, and you said this in a couple different ways already. In the first part, you spoke about in terms of your journey, that you would have thoughts come in, and at a certain point, you realize that you didn't have to believe them necessarily, right? That, a thought can appear, but that doesn't mean you have to own it or take it on, or even that it comes from you. And I think that's, to me, of course, at this point, it seems like an obvious thing. though I think for so many people in the world, that is really a revolutionary concept, because it is, of course, our thoughts that determine the way we see the world, the way we see ourselves. And even that, like, that's a sign of my, old language, our thoughts, right? Whose thoughts? I don't know. Where do they come from? Doesn't matter. Like, and you mentioned taking ownership of yourself, and, whether we're talking about entities or thoughts or emotions, stuff comes in. That's the way it goes in life. We can get triggered. Stuff comes in all the time. Taking ownership means saying, hey, this works for me. This, I'm going to just let go of that, let that out, sweep it out, so to speak. So any more you can say in terms of, what that meant for you personally, or how you work with people in terms of taking ownership, and also, inviting energies, thoughts, emotions to depart when they're not serving?
Yeah. And that's the thing with, like, you asked when I came out, and it was basically more and more as I realized who I am versus who I thought I was. That's when I started coming out, like this background I got, that's me embracing more of this galactic shaman. And I rejected that term shaman. And yet I was doing these like ceremonies for people with breath work and energy work and everything else. And a lot of it I did in secret because I didn't want to be laughed at and ridiculed. And part of me was like, is this all just BS? But then I'd see the transformation in people. I'd see how they would connect to their inner essence and who they are at a deep level. And they would transform, they would light up, they would expand. And all of a sudden they got the answers they needed. I didn't have to set goals for them. I didn't have to like coach them. I do mentoring. And so I help them connect to their energy of what they think they want, because that energy is already there. And then as they do that, it makes it easier for them to be in that field, to be in that frequency. And it comes to them, not always in the way they expect, but in a way that they can dance with and be with. And so like with that energy, with the thoughts that come, is a lot of it comes from our childhood. A lot of it comes from like collective programming from the schools and everything else. But if we get quiet, and I have everyone focus on the breath. So focusing on the breath is like here, now, in this moment. It's what you need to live. If you're not breathing, you're not alive. And so that breath is like an anchor in this physical reality. And then it's like, oh my God, what am I even breathing? And being curious, like we think it's oxygen and all these things that people gave names to, but what is it I'm really breathing? Like what is making me expand? And my heart is beating, the miracle of that. And we start to drop in more into what is right now versus what happened yesterday or is going to happen tomorrow, or what we think that person thinks of us. We're just like right here in this moment, and we're tuned in deep inside. And then something bubbles to the surface. Like, oh my God, wow. I feel this thing I remembered when I was a kid, and I stifled it. I pushed it down. So that's how I work with people. And it's very simple. Like I spent a lot of my life and time and money trying to figure out what was wrong with me and how to like reframe it, rescript it, do soul retrievals, go to all these healers, go through, and get this master's degree and become an expert in what the problem is versus the solution a lot of times. And it was simple. It's like, oh, we're all spirit. We're having an experience down here. We're human too. And so we have to honor the human part, but we are an eternal being, and we can connect to that essence and that energy at any moment we want. And that's always the now moment. And when we do that, the past no longer exists. The future is yet to happen, and we can change everything. But then a thought will come in, and you hear people say this like, oh, I really love what I do, or I really want to do this, but. So it's like getting rid of the buts, because usually, like a friend of mine says, that's the lie. You speak a truth, and then there's a but, and then there's a lie after it that's designed to keep you suppressed or small. And it's not like an agenda thing. I mean, we could say that, but that serves too. It's like if there's pressure and there's things to resist, it allows the expansion and the shift of energy. And like how we all get to come here and play different roles on this planet. We get to be the villain, we get to be the hero, we get to be the martyr, we get to be whatever. And I feel like at this time on the planet, we're all here to be masters. Like it's a time of mastery or misery. And so as we embrace the emotion, as we move towards what lights us up, our passion, our inspiration, our excitement, like when Beans talks about this channel, he's always talking about follow your excitement and just keep going. Don't worry about how it's going to look. The more we embrace that mastery of being a human and remembering our divine origin. And it's not an ego thing. It's more of a, to me, like God is love. The universe is love. The creational energy is love. And all beings will go back to that, no matter how far they seem to have drifted or how evil they seem or whatever. It's always going to come back to source.
Beautiful. That's awesome. I love that. And you mentioned in that so many things you said in there that were like really juicy and full of gold nuggets. One piece though that I'll return to right now is when you recently came out, so to speak, and I don't know if that's the best phrasing for that, but sort of owned more of what's real for you. That prior to that, part of the concern was like, is this really working? Is it real? Are people going to laugh at me? And the way I think of that, and we talk about on the show a lot with different guests, the concept of imposter syndrome, right? And the show is called The Art of Vibrant Living. And to me, part of this is my life, my work is how do we create a vibrant life? And to me, the opposite of a vibrant life is when we are muted or held back or dulled down out of fears or thinking, we're not. So this idea of just bravely going forward and claiming who we are, how life is showing up for us, to me is just of such a vital component. So any more you can say about like what helped you to move beyond the fears or the muted self and really step into ownership?
It's an ongoing thing because, like I said, there's this part of us, you can call it what I refer to it as the ego mind, and the ego is not good or bad. It's just like an anchor so that we can have this experience in this reality. And it's like a computer. So everything put into it is all it knows. And it can know a lot of things, but it's not really designed to help us with life or navigate relationships. And so we have to go to our heart. And to me, that's more like divine mind, more of the mind of God, and where divine thoughts come versus the programmed thoughts and things in the ego mind. And so it's a matter of how do I connect with my heart? How do I connect with that on a daily basis and still hear what's coming in, but not give it power. And that's what I'm doing and working on still. It's an ongoing thing. And I've had enlightenment experiences. I've felt the oneness of all things. And then I got up out of my chair that I was meditating in, and I went right back to where I was, because it was it's a constant like, oh yeah, come back here now, come here now. And I don't know if it's because my mind is really like powerful or what it is, but it's always like going on something. And a lot of people have this, and it's like, oh yeah, it's like a dog barking next door. It's like, oh yeah, the dog's barking. All right, but I'm here. That's not me. I'm here. And so the more I do that, the more I can show up. And I think that's what all the masters did throughout history. Is it's not that they learned how to cast out all the negativity and things in their mind. They just found a way to come to the divine, to come to the God, the sun within them, to come into the light within them and reside there and choose that as much as possible, even when they were triggered into other things. And it's in some of the stories, like the temptation of Christ, of turning over the tables. And I haven't studied a lot of the Vedic stuff, but I'm sure it's in a lot of the stories where there were times where these enlightened masters were like, got frustrated and kind of went a little off track, but they always come back. And so for me, as I keep moving forward and doing like your show is a good example, there's a part of me that freaked out a little, and it's like, what am I going to talk about? Oh, maybe I shouldn't have my background back there. And I'm like, you know what, this is who I am, and I'm just going to embrace it. And maybe it'll help some people to do the same. And that's really what it is again, breathe. Oh yeah, breathe. Because I just breathe. I just show up and breathe. And that's what my guides told me with the energy work I do is, we're doing the work, you just show up. And so I created a little ceremony, with tarot cards for, like confirmation and, telling people what it's going to happen. But I'm channeling an energy that comes through from the divine and helps people. And I was reluctant to do that, but I helped a couple people in a way that was obvious. And so I kept doing it.
That's great. And well, and part of why I asked you to expand on that is because you definitely are helping people, right? Because, in my last couple questions around this, because I know people tune in and they watch, and there's, and it's not, probably the same thing. They're not, saying, can I call myself a galactic shaman, and can I, have a backdrop with pyramids? That's not their question, but they got something in them that's like, is it okay if I show this? Can I really own this? What are people going to think? Like, everybody has that to some degree. And it's, what helps people to have the courage is when they see other people embracing just what's authentic for them. And we spoke earlier about a colleague of ours who was on my show, and there was some controversy about it afterwards. And someone made a comment and said something like, galactic shaman, what is that? Come on. And my response is like, I don't care if you call it, twinkle toes or dipty doop, galactic shaman, psychotherapist. Who cares what the name is? The bottom line is, what they're saying is, does it make sense? Does it resonate? Is it helpful? Like that's what it comes down to. Does that make sense for you?
Yeah, it was because I'm not a traditional shaman in the sense that I was trained by a cultural practitioner. Mine was more like initiations from the universe, where things would happen to me in meditation or just in my life. And part of being a shaman, I believe, is that you have to navigate all these different environments, and you've experienced death in some form. You've seen your past lives, or what we'd call parallel lives. And so that's kind of par for the course. And really, shaman is an archetype of the human experience. And so anybody can connect to that. It's kind of like anybody can play the piano, but are they already predisposed to it? Have they had other lifetimes doing it? And so in this lifetime, that's the path I've been taking. And even the breathwork events I do, I didn't even want to do that originally. Someone asked me to do that with them because they were a sound healer. And I'm like, I don't know anything about breathwork. I just do it myself. I like Wim Hof breathing. I experiment with my breath and meditation. And they're like, well, I can't do it because I got to play the sound bowls and all that. And it's like, all right, I'll do it. And then that evolved into this modality that I have now called Galactic Breathing, that incorporates a lot of different things, but a lot of it was my own experience with the breath and how it interacts with the body. And then, I researched with what it came up. But that's what it is, in my opinion, is, when we're have a soul calling to do something, when something is impulsing us and we're feeling it, and then to shut it down because our skin's white, or because we're a man or a woman, or whatever label we've been given. We're in a time now where that doesn't even really matter anymore. Like, we're in a time where people are owning, their essence more than their physical form. And there's a level of balance we have to have with this too. So like, when I'm in the presence of somebody that's a cultural practitioner and they get irritated with me calling myself a shaman or something, which hasn't really happened that often, I just get quiet and I listen and I show respect. And that's really all it takes is, and I've learned that in my own experience too, with when I start to get angry, it usually means I don't understand something. And I just need to shut up and breathe and listen. And then it gets revealed. And because to call him, a white guy that grew up in the West calling himself a shaman is kind of weird. So I differentiate with the galactic shaman, which is, I met a man that called himself that and still does. But he's more secretive because he had experiences and things, and the level he works at is different. And he told me I could do the same thing when I went to a session. He was removing things from my body and energies and did a soul retrieval. And he's like, you can do this too. I'm like, I don't want to do this. This is weird. I'm not going to go out in public and pull like a sword out of someone's head from another lifetime and have them thank me. That's just, no, because he was telling these stories of things he's done to help people. And they're like, oh my God, I had this splitting headache my whole life and now it's gone because he pulled a sword energetically out of the guy's head. And so like, there was this residual memory or something where it stuck with that person into this lifetime. And maybe it was so some weird guy would come up and pull something out of his head and he'd be like, oh my God, there's more to this reality than I believe. If I feel better and that pain hasn't come back, I can't explain it. It doesn't make any sense. And I probably won't tell anybody, but that's what happened, and I feel better. So, yeah, it's just embracing the reality that we're not in necessarily a solid mass planet. It's frequency and vibration and all kinds of things we don't really understand.
100%. That's really well said. And we are in this era of evolution where as some people call it, the scientism of materialism, this adherence to trying to impose some certainty on a world that is inherently uncertain is breaking down. And as it's breaking down, some are clinging to it so strongly. One of my teachers used to say often, the quality of your life is dependent on the amount of uncertainty you can comfortably tolerate. And I love that because, like, for me in my own evolution, I grew up in standard American diet, SAD, SAD, the whole, conventional way of looking at life, science, better living through science and all that. Didn't know about any of this other stuff, spirituality, any of the woo-woo world. Then I had an experience where God, which was not a word I could have used at the time, just whacked me upside the head. And like the main way I summarize it is the message was, there's more to the world than you've been seeing. And that was like, it was so freeing and exhilarating and blissful, but it was also really scary because my old worldview was blown up. And I remember as I came out of that, like getting really obsessed with personal and spiritual development, like I got to figure this out. Like, my old previous education only got me so far. I need a bigger way of looking at the world now. One of the quotations as I came out of that period that really landed for me was, if you want the truth, just let go of your opinions. Right. And so I love, like, part of why I love controversy, and I love it when people get opposed to something, is because, whether they're willing to look at it or not, whenever we're like opposed to something, well, clearly there's something in it for us, right? Because otherwise we just be like, oh, I don't know, that could be, I don't know, I haven't had that experience, but okay, maybe. So yeah, it's powerful, your experience, and I appreciate that you speak about it in such an authentic and grounded way. And then last thing I'll say, and I want to turn it back over to you with another question, is I got into breath work early on in my journey, 1996. I had this very powerful healing experience through breathing, which completely blew me away. I'm like, just breathing, like, and there's this method, and it led to a peak state, a really pinnacle experience for me. And after that, I was obsessed. Like, I got to learn this and become a practitioner and everything. And I remember my teacher at the time said, well, what we're really doing is vibrational healing. And I was still like, I was not this very far into the alternative worlds, and I was not comfortable with that vibrational healing. I'm like, I don't know, that might make it sound weird for people. I don't know if I'm comfortable with that. But now when I look at it, I'm like, everything is it's everything. And we know that, like, that's the era we're in. You mentioned about energy and particles, and the quantum science revolution is so strong for us now. We know the truth of that. It is all vibration.
Yeah. I love you embrace it with the name of your show even too. I like to embrace something that at first scared you or would create controversy. You're like, now the art of vibrant living, like, not only am I acknowledging this, but I'm working with it, and I'm helping others embody the vibration that they want, to create the life of their dreams, or at least more grace and ease. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and it's, we're not the first to walk down these roads. Like so many of our heroes, I think of, for right now, comes to mind Wayne Dyer, who lived on this island for many years. In the beginning, he was very circumspect about the way he spoke about what he's doing. And then as he evolved, he's like, I don't care if people think I'm a Looney Tune, I'm going to talk about it the way I experience it, the way I see it, and which for him was spirituality. So again, I think the more any of us can just be real and honest about what our experience is and what other people do with it, that's their business.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like the path of an entrepreneur. The best like personal development and spiritual thing you can do, in my opinion, is to be an entrepreneur and like walk that path and be like, this is where I'm going. Those that want to come with me can come with me, kind of thing. And you just keep going. And you get the feedback along the way, but it's lonely, it's scary, but it's also like really liberating. Be like, I'm doing what I love. I don't know if I'm going to make any money this month, or I made a bunch this month. And, it's just like, it's all like a level of faith, like true faith. Like, all right, I'm going to trust that this is right for me. And I'm going to do this thing I'm passionate about, and just keep going with it. And even though I'm scared and I feel like an imposter, I'm going to keep going. And then magic happens. There's always like a, confirmation after, as we push through the fear. There was a quote I read years and years ago that always inspired me, like, beyond fear is genius. And it's true. Like when we break through that limitation, and like you said, the belief that's kind of holding us in place energetically, you rise to a higher vibratory state and you get to a new level of consciousness, a new experience. And when that happens, the ego mind is going to get insecure because, oh my God, what is going on? We don't have any frame of reference for this. This is weird. And then if we go into trying to figure it out, we can only go into the past. And so we'll come up with a negative reason, something to blame, something to push against. But if we just stay in that feeling of discomfort and allow ourselves to just be there, then it becomes our new level, and it just keeps going and going. So, yeah, it's great what you shared, because it is scary. There is this like, I don't know what's happening, what's going on. Everything feels weird. It feels like something bad's going to happen. And then that's why, the breath work, like, oh yeah, breathe, get in that higher vibratory state. Because most people aren't fully breathing because of various reasons, but just getting someone to breathe more deeply changes a lot. And the emotional often come up. So people don't want to feel that. But if you're there with them and help guide them to just be with the emotion and not think with the emotion, it flows like water. And that's a theme for the new earth and the new paradigm we're in is water. Again and again, you're going to hear about the water. And for me, I see it, a lot of it is like the emotion and embracing the emotion. And this is part of the Galactic Shaman piece, is we're not alone in the universe. I think that's becoming much more apparent. And all these other races evolved throughout the galaxy and the universe, and they all tried to not feel things. They tried not to feel certain emotions and tried to control them and suppress them until they finally started to embrace it and realize that there's power in them and there's wisdom. And it's not always fun. Yeah. Like yesterday was Valentine's Day. It wasn't always fun. And then maybe that wasn't enjoyable for everyone. And it's like just being like, okay, I feel sad because it's Valentine's Day or whatever reason, and just feel that, like, and not get into the story. Like, what's wrong with me? Why am I not with somebody? Or why is my relationship not working with the person I'm with? This isn't how I saw Valentine's going. And just being like, okay, just breathe and come into this now moment and feel what's there. And then the emotion comes to the surface, something from the past. Very often this child part comes forward, and then breathing and allowing it to be as it is, like showing love to that part that wants a voice, a seat at the table. And then there's like this dissipation of that energy. And then the next time we're with our partner, it's easier to be with them because we don't have this energy we're trying to silence. Like, so it's like claiming our power back of parts of us that were silenced in a way for whatever reason. And then we just kept doing it because it was uncomfortable. And we made a story about it when it showed up versus, oh yeah, it's like a 2-year-old coming in. Oh, can I just be with the 2-year-old and breathe and hug them and let them know they're safe? I don't have to tell them like, you shouldn't have done that. And you need to like, toughen up and do all that stuff. And there is a time and place where we have to, especially as men, we have to like, suck it up and do certain things, and we can feel it later. And then there's other times where it's like, oh, okay, it's okay for me to be vulnerable now and share this. You know what I mean? And that's one of the confusing things about being a man is there's a lot put on us, and same with women too. And men, it's a little different because we're expected to perform and do things, and we're expected to provide. And we're also expected nowadays to be emotional and feel things and be in our more of our feminine energy. And yet there's still these demands. So it's finding a balance. And the more we connect with the emotion and allow it to be as it is, it brings more emotion, but it also brings this ability to perceive what's happening around us and navigate when others are upset, and kind of like reel in our masculine energy as we're like driving forward. Like, this needs to be done. This needs to be done. And then like, wait a minute. Okay. Does this really need to be done? And that's what the feminine energy is about. And that's what's rising on the planet at this time too, is the receptivity, the feeling, the like, wait a minute, is this really what needs to be done? And then we pause and we look, and it's like, oh, I'm going to pivot this way. And that's better. This way was like just banging my head against the wall, which used to work. But now we're in more of a quantum reality, and that stuff's not going to work as well. In fact, it's going to create madness, is what I predict, is when we try to use our ego mind and like a plan, and we just keep going and going and going without pivoting and taking pauses, it's going to create a lot of like confusion and pain for people. Like, trying to control anything is really an illusion, especially nowadays.
100%. Yeah, that goes back to where we were a minute ago of the this idea of thinking that things are certain, when in truth nothing is, right? Nothing ever can be certain. It could all change in a moment. You said lots of really powerful things in that last little bit, and so many directions we could go. I want to come back though to something you said about entrepreneurship, right? Which is a topic that we get into a lot on this show. And in part because I have the belief that while it's not required that for one to have a vibrant, thriving life, they must be an entrepreneur. Of course, it's not required. Yet I suspect there is some kind of relationship there. Entrepreneurship is also a realm that is scary for a lot of folks. And there are a lot of people, and I don't think everybody should be an entrepreneur. It's not for everybody. And there's a lot of downsides to it. For some of us, there's kind of like no choice. However, what I'm most interested in is for the people that are feeling like, I kind of want to, I would like to, but I don't know. So what's your take on this? Like, what's the relationship between a vibrant, thriving life and entrepreneurship?
Well, I think it comes to sovereignty, to be sovereign in your choices. And yeah, if we choose to work for someone else and we like working for them and we're contributing to something meaningful, I think that's awesome. I would love to do that. I prefer that a lot of times. But like, to be an entrepreneur is like, I'm not really finding what I want, or, in the old sense, like the king I want to serve or the queen I want to serve. There's this idea of the knight that wants to go serve, right? And if you don't find that, like, what do you do then? And then you got to like serve your calling, serve that soul, what the soul's asking for, and creating something that maybe has never existed before. And then trying to share it with people that at first are kind of like, what is this? Or what's going on? Or what are you doing now? Or I know you to be this, and now you're doing that. And so, yeah, I think it's challenging and it's super rewarding. And to me, it's about the sovereignty of like, this is my thing. I get to decide how my energy's spent. I'm serving people, I'm helping people, but at the end of the day, I'm making the decisions. And people I collaborate with, I always prefer it's equal. They may know more than me, they may have more experience, but if it's not equal, I don't really want to do it, because I feel like on the new earth, we're all equal. Everyone is equal. And then there's people that are better at certain things, but it doesn't mean they get to tell us what to do or determine our reality in a sense. I don't know if that answers your question. I have an Aries moon, and I'm a Capricorn, and I have a lot of fire, and I'm Scottish. So like, we don't like to be controlled or told what to do. You tell me to do something, I'm going to like kind of resist and fight it a little, but you ask me, I'll generally be like, oh yeah, sure. Let's do that thing. So, my path is one of like, yeah, I'm going to do it. I want to try doing it myself. And yeah, it's scarier for sure.
All right. Well, since you put it that way, I'm going to tell you what you should do, Jason. And in this context, I'll phrase it as a question. Would you say more about sovereignty? Because I have a feeling that is a really juicy and important topic these days, right? There's a lot of conversation out there about, the elites and control and agendas. And there's a lot of fear around that I think probably distorts reality for a lot of people. And, part of the fear of like, people are controlling me. Well, all right, let me stop talking because I want to hear from you. What is sovereignty? What does it mean? And how's that relevant these days, especially?
It's similar to what I talked about earlier when you sit in meditation or you come home and you're really in your space. So for me, as I go within and I'm really in that space and I'm connecting with the essence of who I am, it's like claiming that space. Like I have the right to breathe and I have the right to exist here in this space. And so as we take ownership of the temple in which we embody, as we notice the thoughts that are coming and then choosing, the breath until a thought comes that we want to entertain and dance with, that's like the first layer or level. And then it's like, as I look out, what do I want to create? And who am I impacting? How is this dance? I often refer to it as a dance with reality. Like, how am I dancing with what's around me? And am I being pushed? Am I being told what to do? Or am I actively choosing and making decisions and also, allowing the back and forth? And so that's kind of like another layer and level. And then at some point it's like, okay, who do I hire and how do I treat them? Am I going to treat them as like, you got to do what I'm telling you because I'm giving you money? Or is this somebody that I'm very grateful that they're here with me and I want to, make sure their life's better too. And at the same time, realize, I'm going to get some like parental stuff with that person potentially because I'm the authority figure in their eyes. And so being patient and at the end of the day, I think it's responsibility. Like it's scary to take on more responsibility. It's scary to be like, oh yeah, that's my fault. Even if it wasn't, like, that's my fault. And just own that and feel what's there and learn from it and then keep going forward. And I don't know if I always do that great with it, but like, I think that's what leadership is and sovereignty is. No longer is there anyone telling you what to do, but no longer is there anyone to blame either. So it's
that's a lot of what I heard you saying in that in different ways is it's a lot to do with the choice of, am I a victim or am I the creator of my reality? And it is scary, I think, for everybody to some degree and, to various frequencies to let go of being a victim, right? Because responsibility, like, hey, like it or not, I created this, right? And of course, the flip side is, well, very empowering because that means I can create something else. So you've tossed out a couple juicy words in the midst of this. We've been talking about entrepreneurship. You spoke about service, and you spoke about the knights who are looking for the monarch that they can serve, and maybe they don't vibe with this one. Maybe that's a greedy monarch, but oh hey, this one's noble, taking care of the. Okay, I can go over there. So you talked about service. We talked about entrepreneurship, and then you spoke about leadership a moment ago. So, these concepts, what would you say in terms of leadership, service, and again, bringing it back to vibrant living? How do these items relate? What do you feel there?
It's like the integrity of ourselves, our energy, our mind, our body, coming into, again, what rings out is this sovereignty of, again, the word sovereignty of just being, and really it comes down to like, none of this is even real, to just breathe and enjoy the ride. And that's hard when something's happening to us that we prefer not to happen. And it's like trying to figure out why it's happening doesn't always work. Trying to figure out how to get out of it doesn't always work. Sometimes it's just like, oh, I'm in this thing and I have to face it. And just being there, and then something opens, something comes from beyond what we think. And that's why a lot of it, is surrender. Like I said, I tried to find all these things to fix me that I thought were wrong with me, or try to figure out what was wrong with me first. And then I knew what was wrong with me. Because before I was like, oh, if I just know what's wrong with me, I'll be able to fix it. And then I knew what it was and I still couldn't fix it. And now I know what it is. I know how to fix it. And now I actually got to keep doing it every day, so why go to all that? Why not just bypass it all and come into the moment and just breathe with what's there and allow the divine wisdom to come forth? And so that's what I'm working on now, is just trusting, like this show, it's great because we're just going with the flow. We're going with the energy in the moment and what's coming up, what's inspiring to dive into. Cause I throw out a ton of stuff, it's just like, blah, here, my opportunity to share all this stuff. And then there's like, something you resonate with, and then we go down that path. And so I think that's really the essence of life, is like, can I just enjoy this ride? And if I'm not enjoying it, that's my feedback. If my emotions are upsetting me, that's my feedback too. And to just be with it. And, there's help in guiding us through this. But a lot of what I learned is you can't figure it out with the ego mind. You can't necessarily find meaning in it until you're through it. Like once we, like saying, if you're in hell, don't stop. So like you just go through the thing and you go, and then you get out and you let it go. And that's hard too. Like grief's a very real thing for the human experience. Like it's hard to let go of things that we wanted to have happen or people we loved. And again, it's coming into the presence and feeling it and then just moving forward. So yeah, I wish I could tell you there's a holy grail. I mean, maybe there is. I've seeked it and I've trained with a lot of different people and I had many, many teachers, and most of them think they've found it, but I see beyond it. I see where they're stuck. And so I just move on and I keep moving on. And yeah, and for me, it's breathe, come into presence. It's not even the breathing or any of that stuff. That's just the distraction to bring us into this now moment, to the source of all things. And when we pop into that, it's like, oh my God, everything's great. And then, the density of this planet and all the collective thoughts and the energy comes in and it kind of like hides it all again, so it's, yeah.
This is a bit of a weird segue, but what you just said reminds me of, there's a beautiful scene in this movie called I Heart Huckabees, right? Did you know this movie?
I've heard of it. I've never seen it though.
It's a great, quirky movie. And there's two characters. I'll make this real simple. Two characters who are both engaged in the movie, they call it deconstructing reality, but they're on the path of self-development or awakening or whatever way we call it. And one of them, and the two of them are sitting on a picnic bench, and they have like this big rubber ball, like the ones we played dodgeball with when we were a kid, with the thick rubber. And one of them, for whatever reason, I forget how they got there, but one of them is hitting himself in the face with it, and if anybody hasn't ever had that experience, you get hit in the face with a rubber ball. It's like this weird sting that happens. It's not entirely unpleasant, but certainly not pleasant either. And in the movie, the guy does this and he hits it. And then like he has this moment, what the Buddhists would call satori. And suddenly he's like, and he experiences like what Jesus called the peace that passeth all understanding, this moment of enlightenment where everything is perfect, everything is in its place. And he goes, I got it. Right. And his friend's sitting next to him on the bench and he's like, I want that. Give me that ball. So he grabs the ball from him, starts hitting himself in the face too. And he does it like 20 times. And the one guy's just blissed out and the other guy's hitting it. And then it's a hilarious scene. But then there's a moment when the second guy gets it also. And of course, meanwhile, they've been doing all kinds of work. They've been on the path. The second guy gets it too. And he's like, experiences this moment of freedom. And then he says, so we just have to keep hitting ourselves in the face with the ball all the time. That's right. And the other guy says this beautiful thing, which is, no, it's just the way it goes in life, is that, sometimes you're caught in the illusion and then there are moments where you're free of it. And I'm sure he used completely different language. I haven't seen this in a long time. But to me, that's a lot like what you said. And I love your perspective on the teachers that have, seem like they've or think they've got to the Holy Grail or they've reached the end. And I've learned really well now from my own experience, as well as that of students, clients, and colleagues, that anytime we say like, I reach the end, like, beware, I finally got there, like, beware, because, there's a fall coming, because there's always more. So, I think you express that in such a beautiful way, which is, we just keep going forward. And I love that you're not judging these teachers, but you see where they get caught up, and that gives you the freedom and the flexibility and the honesty and the humility to be able to continue forward without building this cage or pedestal underneath yourself, so that you can keep growing and awakening. Does that make sense? Am I hearing you well, you think?
Oh yeah. Yeah. And, and in all honesty, they know there's more, but there's this idea that everybody needs to learn this thing and it's going to help everyone. And there's truth to it. And there's like, it's just a piece of the puzzle kind of thing. So yeah, I just wanted to highlight that part. But it is absolutely. It's like the illusion comes in and then we snap out of it. And the illusion comes in, we snap out of it. And there's a lot of people, I think, that want to leave the illusion. I want to be here. I want to have this experience. This planet is beautiful. This is great. I would just like a little more grace and ease. And so that's what I'm trying to create in my life. And for me, this life isn't necessarily about what I call a master of the universe, where I can just sit and intend things to manifest the way I want them exactly. And a lot of it doesn't happen the way I want. And I have to like pivot and navigate it. And I have to come up and feel what's coming up for me as a result and be like, what's wrong with me? Why can't I do that? And then let that go and come back to, okay, this is where I'm at. This is my path. And just trusting and making the best of it, finding that love inside, even with everything going on. And my life's not that challenging or difficult, but there's things I prefer and I want, and they don't manifest, and some people say they can do that and they teach you how to do that. But, it's been my experience that I haven't mastered that, at least not in this lifetime. I saw other lifetimes where I was very powerful and got what I wanted, but this one, like I said, is a path of mastery, and that's dancing with what is rather than trying to make it what is, being receptive to the divine guidance of the universe versus this is where I want to live. This is who I want to date. This is the way I want my life to look. This is how much money I want in my bank account. And if I just meditate long enough, it'll happen. Because I tried that. It didn't work for me anyway. So maybe I just haven't met the right teacher. But my message with that is to, trust there is, like the Hopi speak of, a river of life that takes us right to where we want to go. And if we can just float and allow that process without clenching to the rocks and, getting beat up and bruised along the process, along the way, we will go right where we want to go. And so enjoying the ride. And if it's all an illusion, ultimately we can't really be destroyed or trapped or stuck, but it feels that way. And it's so real here. And that's the point. It feels so real. And what I help people do is snap out of it and be like, oh yeah, wait, I'm here, I'm back. I get it now. And so the more I bring them to that place of like, oh, I get it now, I remember, the more life gets easier.
Beautiful. I love that. So, oh boy, time's flying along, Jason. Let's pause for a minute, because if I'm remembering correctly, and there's about 12 roads we could go down with what you just said, but I'm going to pause us for a minute. You kindly offered a free gift for our audience. Is that true?
I'm trying to remember what it was, but yeah, sure.
I know there was something in there. Well, let's see. 5-minute energy shift. Does that make sense to you?
Oh yeah, I have a free like mini course on my website where it just teaches you a little how to go within, how to connect with the heart, with the breath, and come into more presence. And it's good for like once you feel the emotion, to help shift out of it. So you can find that on my website. Okay,
well, so that begs the question. That's something that people can get on your website. Your website is?
Yeah, jasondonaldsonhealer.com.
All right. And for y'all that might be listening rather than viewing, it is on the screen though. If you're listening, that's JASON, and then it's the DONALDSON.com. Just because I know I make a lot of spelling errors, and better you get to the right Jason Donaldson than the imposter out there, or who knows what's out there. So that's great. And I love the 5-minute energy shift. Like one of the challenges I faced when I first started working with people, I remember 1998 living at Esalen Institute in California, and I was studying Gestalt therapy. One of the things they said there was, as a therapist, your clients' experience, whether they progress or not, it's not your responsibility. It's up to them. And I remember this so clearly. I was like an infant in this world at that point, just starting to work with people. And I was in a room with 25 people. Most of them were way older than me, way more experienced. And everybody was just nodding like, yeah, that's true. And I remember thinking like, that's bullshit, man. I mean, no, that's like I don't have, like, there's nothing I can do. What's the point then? So, I love that part of what you're offering with that free gift is saying, hey, here's something you can do. Like, you can do this and change the way you're feeling right now. You do have some power, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And we have way more power than we realize. We're way more powerful than we realize. And it's not any kind of power that we yield to our bidding necessarily, but it's more of like it flows through us from source, from the creational energy that is all things. And when you tap into that, you're invincible. You still experience things in life, but it's like you always remember the essence of your being and that it's going to be okay.
That's powerful. Yeah. All right. Well, so what else, Jason? People will want to be in touch with you. You've given your website, jasondonaldson.com. Is that the best way to be in touch with you, to connect with you? What else would you tell us?
Oh, it's Jason Donaldson Healer. So you have to put the healer part in there because there is another Jason Donaldson out there that does like fitness work and stuff, which looks really great.
At that.
He looks similar to me too. There's a lot of Jason Donaldson. So if you put healer in there, you'll find me, or Hawaii. And I do a monthly New Earth guided meditation and connection call the first Monday of every month. So that's something people can check out for free as well. And I'll be in Arizona next month doing an expo and a Galactic Breathing ceremony. And I do have offerings online, various offerings you can see on my website.
Right on. Well, I'm so glad you corrected me. I thought I was being so clear earlier, and I left out a key part of your website. Thank you. JasonDonaldsonHealer.com. Yes.
Well, you said it the first time, right? Yeah.
Okay, good. All right.
Yeah.
So every now and then I get something right. Great. Well, and that's, thank you for giving all these offerings, in different ways for people to connect with you. So anything that I haven't asked you about, in our last minute here before I ask you the final big question?
I'm curious about you, what you would ask somebody that calls themselves a galactic shaman, like your first impression when you saw it, you were given my name and heard what I was about.
Well, thank you. For me, like from my 1996 divine 2x4 upside the head, one of the greatest realizations I had coming out of that is I don't know anything, right? And so when somebody says to me they're a galactic shaman, or they are a ballerina, or they fly with their ears flapping, my response is like, wow, cool. Tell me more about that. So, and I've also learned that people's history, their pedigree, their certifications, their degrees, what they call themselves, none of that necessarily means anything. It's all determined for me, it's all about, what I feel and see, and the conversation and the results that they are able to help people with. So I didn't really have any preconceptions. I knew just from our pre-show communication that you're a sincere and real person who's out to do good in the world. So I knew that, and that was enough for me to say, awesome, let's connect. And you delivered on that and much more here. So thank you.
Yeah, I love that, because that's one of the most powerful things we can do is be curious. And you mentioned that earlier about the beliefs limiting us, is like when we think we know what a thing is, what it's been labeled, or, and who labeled it in the first place. When we let go of all that and be curious about the thing and feel the energy of it, it opens up a whole new reality. And I think that's what, Jesus said when he's like, be like a child in the world, not childish, but be like a child, be curious, be in the wonder of everything versus I know what this is. And I know what that is. And this was labeled this by, somebody, and therefore that's what it is. It's like, no, they made it up.
Exactly.
And somebody else made it up before them. So yeah, I love it. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah. All right. Well, last quick thing then, because we're already flying against the clock here. The big question, may I ask it to you?
Sure.
All right. So it's an impossibly big question. So you can't get it right, which means you can't get it wrong.
Love.
You've got so much experience and wisdom. If you boil it all down to one thing, what's the one thing you would say to help somebody to create a vibrant, thriving life?
Breathe. Set a timer, breathe for 5 minutes and notice what happens, and then breathe some more. Like, it's really that simple, is just to come in. Really, we want to come into presence, and the breath does that for us, and noticing what comes up as a result, letting go of the thoughts that are being offered and come to the breath, continually come to the breath until the mind slows down and the thing passes. So if people are struggling or stressed out, that breathing just transforms everything. So that's what I'd recommend, is always come back to the breath, which will lead you to your heart, which will lead you to everything.
That's right there with you. Hallelujah and amen to the breath. Beautiful. Breath is life. Jason, thank you so much for not only for, taking this time to be with us today, but also for the journey you've been on, the work you've done, the courage that you have exemplified in your life to step forward, to come out, to embrace your weird, to be a role model for us all. That it really means a lot. So thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you for this great platform you've created too. It's really great experience.
Right on. Awesome. All right. And for y'all, our audience, thank you, because you rock. I love that you are interested. No, not interested. You're beyond interested. You're doing something about it. You are creating your vibrant, thriving life by getting educated, by focusing on it, by bringing your attention to it. Because not only does that make your life better, it truly makes the world better. It's fantastic. I'm honored that you were here. I hope you tune in with us again soon. And as always, in the meantime, right now, today, make your life a masterpiece. Aloha, y'all. Mahalo for tuning in to the Art of Vibrant Living show, y'all. I'm Daniel Aaron, and may you live with great vibrancy.